All right, Legacy Cube is back. So unfortunately, I don't know how to bring up the games. Excuse me, bring up the deck list, but I can bring up the games from my most recent one, and then probably what I'll do is end up recording a live stream if there's any interest. Well, I don't know. I might just do it for fun. Anyway, the deck I had was fantastic, though. My first, so this is the third deck. The first two decks I built both were blue black aggro, but there wasn't enough. I could never get enough cheap counters to make it viable. So then I switched over to blue-green tempo deck where you generate tons of mana and try to win with upheaval. And it's this deck you see here. It actually is splashing white for a single card, which is Stoneforge Mystic, and that's because the deck has both Umezawa's Jitte and Sword of Fire and Ice in it, which is great since blue and green are a little light on removal in general. But as you can see in game one, my opponent just had my number. And my draw is very awkward. So I end up having to cycle a counterspell and then play a Stratus Dancer, morphed hopefully to get something going here. My opponent plays Deceiver Exarch, taps my untapped island. I can't unmorph the Stratus Dancer because it only counters instants, and he has Electrolyze. So, if he hadn't had the ability to Deceiver Exarch my land down, I would have been fine. If he had tapped my land but didn't have Electrolyze, I'd have been fine. If he didn't have Kiki Jiki here, backed up by a counterspell, I would have been fine. Basically, this guy had pretty much his perfect draw, and I had a very clunky, awkward draw. But that was our first game, and I was thinking, gosh, please don't let that be indicative of how the rest of this is going to go. Fortunately, it was not. So game two, I have a little bit of a slower start, but it has a ton of potential, and the mana is a lot stronger too. So I get turn 2 Umezawa's Jitte, and then my opponent Hymn to Taurox me. So I thought I was good to go, and he Hymn to Taurox away Edric and Master of the Wild Hunt, which left me with another removal card, which left me with nothing to play, and I ripped Savala off the top, which was huge. And he seems to be having a problem with his mana a little bit over there with that tricolored deck he's got. All right, so we've got Savala equipped. I drew Miscalculation, which is right on time, so I can shut down his Deceiver Exarch. Now let's start getting some counters on the Jitte. And Savala, by the way, Umezawa's Jitte is quite a combo. So he plays a Lantern. I can't stop that. All right, so we get a morph here. I've drawn a Sword of Fire and Ice, and Savala, of course, provides me with a card off of the morph. And then my opponent tries to play Dragonlord Silumgar. So what I do is I pump Savala in response, and then put mana into it using Breeding Pool, which now provides 4 mana and allows me to dissipate away his dragon. Which is why I didn't attack with Savala, by the way. All right, so we move the Jitte over to the morph. The morph, of course, is a Stratus Dancer, so if he plays an instant or a sorcery, I've got that covered. Instead, he plays a Sphinx. I just let him have the card since he's going to be drawing plenty of cards off Sphinx anyway. And also because I need all of the counters on the Jitte. And my opponent scoops it up. So what I was going to do is play Sword of Fire and Ice, equip Stratus Dancer here. It already has 2 counters with Jitte. Then I would attack my opponent. It would be unblockable, so my opponent would take 4 damage and I would draw a card. And then from there, I would remove. I would do 2 damage with Sword of Fire and Ice to Consecrated Sphinx, and then remove counters from Jitte to kill it. So the way I would stack it is, I would attack my opponent, hit him, stack the sword underneath the Jitte trigger, resolve the Jitte trigger, shrink the Sphinx down to 2 toughness, resolve the sword, and deal 2 to it simultaneously, killing it. So hopefully preventing him from getting the 2 extra cards off of my draw. And then from there, we're in really good shape. I guess my opponent agreed, so he just scooped it up. It's kind of weird because he had so many cards and so much mana. I felt like that was a little premature, but I was more than happy to see him give up. And my third hand is great. We get a lead off with Avacyn. Hopefully we're not getting him to Taurox this turn, which would be difficult off of a first turn island, but not impossible. So I go second turn Fire and Ice since that made him concede last time. And I saw a exclude. I figured I'd try to play around that. So he kills my guy right away, so I must have made the right call with the sword. I throw Edric down, and now I'm hitting him with a sworded up Edric with miscalculation back up, which I'll need because of this Venser. Awesome. And he is in big, big trouble. So if I didn't have the miscalc there, he would have bounced the sword, blocked the Edric, and then I would have been in a bad way. But nope. He's got nothing. His hand is entirely blue and red, apparently, and me drawing 2 cards per turn and dealing 6 damage to him per turn is enough for him to give up. This hand was going places too, so not bad. It was not bad for a good for a start. So the nice thing is I was playing the reason I can't actually bring up the deck list, but the nice thing about how I was playing is that I was playing in League. So apparently the League doesn't record your decks, or if it does, I don't know how to get to them. So if anybody has the answer to that, that would be great. After the fact, you know. And look at this. So here's my second opponent, and he is in for a world of hurt. Look at that hand. It is like perfect. First turn Pilgrim. Well, it needs an island, but other than that, it is looking really good. But however, my opponent's hand, well, he's got a Sylvan, and actually, I missed an island, so this just got a little bit clunkier. At any rate, oh, I just realized I am actually going to have to remember to pause the video next time I search. I don't want to go back, though, and redo it. So he gets a tireless tracker. Because of the clunkiness of my hand, I'm actually slowed way down, allowing him to take advantage of Sylvan and tracker and start producing extra cards. So actually, this hand that started out extremely good has just gotten quite a bit worse. So I go for Master to try to get some board presence here. My opponent cheats out sneaks out a Restoration Angel at the end of my turn. I mean, I have everything I need to win, but no way to deploy it. And unfortunately, he's got Dromoka's Command. So Dromoka's Command allows him to kill, allows him to pump up his Angel and then kill my Master of the Wild Hunt, which was a really big loss. And I'm quite concerned about the Windbrisk Heights he's got over there. So I'm trying to. He also played a Nissa, which is going to allow him to create more creatures. So I'm trying to like keep. Well, first I want to kill Tireless Tracker because I don't want him getting even more clues. Secondly, I'm trying to keep the number of creatures he has in play down, suppressed with Umezawa's Jitte because I don't want him Windbrisk Heights winning. And then third, I've got to worry about the fact that I'm taking 4 per turn in the air. And I'm still not drawing land. And this has gotten really, really bad. So at this point, I don't see that I can do too much. I go ahead and kill his Mentor of the Meek, I believe. Or do I? No, I don't. I just wait to see what he's going to do and then try to kill it in response to Nissa. I actually slay 2 of his guys, but this has just become hopeless with Wolfer Silverheart coming down, allowing him to make a 9/10 flyer. I can actually gain some life here, and I believe I do, just to try to live one more turn. But then with the 2 life that I'm about to gain from Umezawa's Jitte, my opponent plays the card that was under Windbrisk Heights, which was Mirari's Wake, allowing his plan to kill Edric, his mentor to kill my wall, and causing him to deal 10 to me. So even if I gain 2 life and go to 1, I'm pretty much just sitting there with no board at all, and that's just not a winner. So we move on to game 2. Well, I'll try to. My system will catch up. All right, here we go. All right, so for game 2, another great draw, only this time, look, I actually have my second color. So the main colors in this deck are green and blue. I played that first game with just green and white is splash color for 1 card only, so that was just, there's a reason why it was so hard to do. So anyway, he plays first turn Oath of Nissa and picks up an Elspeth, second turn Sylvan Library, which I can Spell Pierce, which is fantastic. I get turn 1 Bird, turn 2 Caryatid, turn 3 Master of the Wild Hunt. And with that, my opponent gives up. So he has no way to kill the hunt. And it's going to kill everything that he plays. So he just throws in the towel right away and we move on to the next game. Had he not, of course, I could have played Wall of Blossoms. I could have drawn a card, played the wall, sat on Dissipate, and that's without even accounting for whatever I would have drawn for the turn or off of the wall, which may have been, and most likely would have been, more gas. So yeah, he was probably dead right away. That was an excellent hand to lead off with. So he just goes for, I don't know, game 3. So he's had turn 2 Sylvan Library 100% of games. But hey, look, this time I got my Elder, I've got Rampant Growth, so I'm going to need to pause for that when I do it so that we can actually get the deck list. And turn 2 Sylvan Library, 3 for 3. All right, so I get Sword of Fire and Ice out. To try to, so the thought process here is, first of all, Sword of Fire and Ice is going to pressure any creatures he plays. Because I have a bird, I can just start killing his creatures. Secondly, if he doesn't play creatures, I actually will deploy the Master of the Wild Hunt. Thirdly, Sword of Fire and Ice, once it starts going, deals so much damage so quickly that every time you hit your opponent, if you hit them for 2 with the sword and 2 with the sword's effect, you're effectively preventing one of the cards off a Sylvan. So you can very, very quickly punish them for using Sylvan. So the idea here was to deploy, rather than develop mana, which I normally would do, was to deploy a way to affect the board and my opponent's life total quickly because of the Sylvan Library that he played. So my opponent plays, I don't understand this play at all, but he throws on Mentor of the Meek, unless it's just to protect his life total. So we're going to go face with the bird, kill the Mentor, and my opponent just gives up. I don't understand at all how those last 2 ones won, so I guess we never get to see with Wild Growth, Rampant Growth rather, what the deck list was, but you're probably starting to get a feel for it. I swear there's going to be another shuffle opportunity. Or I think there is. Alright, anyway, so last opponent, and I've got a very keepable hand. A little slow, so hopefully, and now hopefully we'll get to Rampant Growth. So I go ahead and lead off with Mutavault only because I'd rather have an active play on turn 2, potentially, where I can hit my opponent if I absolutely have to. It would be extremely unlikely for that to be the case, but anyway, turn 2, but it's still the correct play, I think. So turn 2, I drew a Sylvan Caryatid, so we'll get that deployed on the board. And then next turn it should be Rampant Growthing. Alright, my opponent gets turn 2 secure a Tribe Elder. Steve. Oh, well, no, I top deck Master of the Wild Hunt, so that's going to take priority. We're going to get the tempo out. So I'm seeing green and blue over there, which is good. If I have Master of the Wild Hunt out, my opponent gets Scavenging Ooze. And then I drew Savala, which is, again, I keep drawing these like priority plays. And then my opponent, so he sacks Secure Tribe Elder. I can respond to the effect, but not to the sacrifice because that's the cost. So if I were to attempt to kill Scavenging Ooze at that point with the STE on the stack, he would just eat the Tribe Elder, and then my wolf would die and his ooze would live, and then he would go fetch a land. So that won't work. If I try to push it before he sacks it, well, he'll just sack in response and make the same play, so that won't work. The only way that I can actually kill this Scavenging Ooze without getting a second wolf is if he attempts to exile the Elder. And he thinks about it and he does it. Thank you. So in response, I'm going to exchange an ooze for a wolf. He's going to still, the effect from the ooze is going to resolve after the ooze is dead. So it won't be able to put a counter on a dead creature, but it will give him a life and exile Steve over there. So my opponent gets a Thragtusk, which will trigger Savala, unfortunately, giving him a card. Savala, Master of the Wild Hunt is a combo. If you can find a way to make the wolf tokens bigger, you can just draw a card every turn. Alright, so we drew into Primeval Titan and Rampant Growth. Stop! Oh my goodness, really? Why did it? Alright, well, whatever. Anyway, if you're quick enough, I suppose you could rewind and take a look at the deck list if you are interested. If you didn't do that the first time around. Anyway, so now I'm sitting on Savala and unclear to my opponent most likely, but I can pump Caryatid into Savala, getting 3 mana for Master and dissipate this turn. So we are actually sitting on a counterspell here. And that will come in handy, I believe, when he tries to play this 5/4 with Formidable. No. Not only do I not want him to have that card, giving his creatures haste and smashing my face pretty hard, but I also don't want him drawing another card off Savala. And once I get Primetime down, it's extremely unlikely. Oh, and then his Wood Elves is just an easy kill with the wolf. So once I get Primetime down, it's a very easy it's very unlikely that anything else he plays will trigger Savala, so I'm not going to have to worry too much about my opponent getting free cards. Look at that top deck. Holy smokes. All right, so I'm 1 mana short of actually activating Savala here and having 6 mana. So I'm going to go ahead and play Primeval Titan. Oh, there's another opportunity to take a look at the deck, I suppose. I fetch out Stirring Wildwood, and I fetch out Razorvine Thicket, and then I draw a card off of the Savala effect, which happened to be Mishra's Factory. Unfortunately, it wasn't green, because I would have really liked to have activated Savala if I had had a green source, producing 6 mana, casting Sword of Fire and Ice, and equipping it right away. So the plan is to upheaval, and the result of this plan, or since I plan to upheaval, what I need to do is I want to kill Thragtusk, because Thragtusk triggers when it leaves play. I have Thragtusk in this deck, so it's a combo for me as well, where you play Thragtusk and then you just heave and you get a creature left over. So I want to make sure that Thragtusk is dead beforehand. And then he plays Show and Tell, and I'm quite nervous. But I play what I can. I play the Sword of Fire and Ice, but all he gets is a Vorinclex out, and that's perfectly fine because the game plan for next turn trumps Vorinclex. So now he generates tons of mana, and he plays, because he's got a personal mana flare over there, Karn, and I'm like, please don't hit my hand. But he decides to take out the Primeval Titan. Totally makes sense. I understand why he did it. So glad that he didn't go hand. All right, so end of turn, we're gonna kill Thragtusk so that we don't want to trigger a beast for him, like we discussed earlier. Unfortunately, Savala is not going to produce 6 mana now, and so I draw for the turn. And I was thinking about so if I equip Sword onto Master, I would spend 2 mana, and then Savala will produce 2 extra mana. So it's a free equip. But the question is, would I then attack? And if it weren't for Vorinclex, of course, I would attack. So that would make sense. Equip, swing, and then use Savala, who will then produce additional mana. But since I don't plan to actually attack, there's no point in pre-equipping, spending 2 mana to get 2 back. So I might as well just go ahead and make the play that I plan to make. So I think, is there any chance I'm going to attack here at all with any combination of creatures? As it turns out, the answer is no, none. So we'll just go for it. If Primeval Titan were out, though, I would have equipped him, because it would have been spend 2 mana to get 2 mana, and smash with an 8/8. All right. So we are producing tons of mana, and heave ho. And I have so much mana. I can play Master of the Wild Hunt, Sylvan Caryatid, play a land, throw away a bunch of extra lands I don't need, and look at this hand, Savala, Wall of Blossoms. This is so good. So we're going Master right away, because of how funky it is at controlling the board. I get Savala down on turn 2, effectively turn 2. My opponent gets his Sylvan Library again, and now we've got Wolves for days, and my opponent sees the handwriting on the wall and just scoops it up. So, of course, if he didn't, the question was, what was the best play? And the answer is probably, I wouldn't have been able to play Sword, but what I could have done is I could have activated Savala to get 3 mana, then played the Sword, equipped the Sword, smash my opponent, put it on a wolf, hit my opponent, draw an extra card, play a tapped land, and pass for the turn, price during Wildwood, and then pass for the turn would have been the play. So anyway, very easy upheaval game. And we move on to game 2. And that's actually the combo of the deck, by the way. I mean, that's actually what the deck's supposed to be about. But in those other games were very strange because none of that stuff was happening the way that it was supposed to. All right, so we got first turn Bird again. This deck loves its first turn cards, and then he gets a first turn Elf, though, and he gets second turn Courser, a card I would have absolutely loved to have in this deck, revealing a Primeval Titan. So I've got to be aware of that, but I'm going to go ahead and just play my Morph anyway, just so that I have Stratus Dancer down, and if I need to protect myself from an instant or sorcery, I can, and also because I just want to curve out. He's revealing Birthing Pod, so I am quite nervous about how good his hand is over there. So I'm going to get Master of the Wild Hunt down as soon as I can. I'm not going to attack with my Morph since I didn't give it flying yet. And try to get a control of his board before his Birthing Pod allows him to get control of mine. And I've got to be aware, of course, he's got Pod next turn. He hits a land off the top this time, I think. Yeah, and decides Thragtusk is the play over the Pod. I guess he didn't really want to pod away Courser, and Llanowar Elves doesn't make a ton of sense. So that's fine with me. We're going to kill those elves. Oh, I drew miscalculation. It's so good right there. All right. Finally, I paused the video. All right, so this is the rest of the deck. And I think you've basically seen them all. And actually in this game, you'll kind of see them all anyway. But I have no planes to search for because I have enough off-color white sources from my one card. And I sideboarded in and out Mana War. In this game, I brought it in, but it was a card that was actually started sideboarded out. And I can't remember what the replacement card was. But anyway, yeah, it's tons of ramp, as you can see. Tons of value cards, lots of board control, many counters in terms of, well, I've got Dissipate, Forbid, Spell Pierce, Miscalculation. It's enough. And then just all kinds of really good card draw. Savala is actually surprisingly, amazingly better than what I expected it to be. So it's actually a card that were I to be playing green in EDH these days, I would almost certainly be running it. Anyway, so he gets to hit me with Thragtusk, and he reveals the land with Courser, plays a Wood Elf, and then goes for Birthing Pod. Birthing Pod's so dangerous. I can't allow it. Even though he's got a Karn on top of his deck, I'm just gonna have to worry about it later. So I get to Wall of Blossoms here, finding a Brainstorm, and I brainstorm into more land and more mana. And then I kill his Courser. So I can hit him with the Morph. So now here's the thing. He's gonna play Karn, and so I set this up so that I had exactly 2 cards in hand because I know he's going to play Karn, and if he Karns my hand, I'm actually going to give up the Sphinx because Upheaval's a winner. And if he doesn't, then he's most likely to Karn the board. And if he hits the board, the target he'll probably take out is the Master, but we have a plan for that, and the plan is already in play. So if you look at the math, what I was hoping he'd do is exactly what he did. So we go Stratus Dancer to Karn, leaving exactly 6 mana and Consecrated Sphinx, and now I can get cards in my hand right away. And things are looking really good here. So my opponent gets to draw. He plays Garrick and draws off it. So I draw up to a full hand of 7 and stop. I only have 19 cards left in my deck. I don't need that many more cards. And he plays Eternal Witness. What did he get back? Karn again. So that's fine. We're going to go face with the Flyers. I'm playing more mana, Overgrown, and Whisperwood, more creatures. So this is a combo, by the way. So Whisperwood Metamorph, it manifests the top card of your library at the end of your turn, right? And then when you heave, those creatures go into your hand. And so right here, Whisperwood did actually one of the things that I kind of speculated when I was building the deck, sort of living the dream. Whisperwood manifested a Dissipate, and I'm holding Upheaval. So when I Upheaval, I'm actually getting a counterspell back. Anyway, so I'll draw off my opponent. I'm at 15 cards, but I'm so greedy, like in this game, and I feel perfectly safe with the Spell Pierce and everything else, that I actually continue to press. Like, I'm going to heave at some point, but I'm not going to Upheaval until I either have like absolutely gross amounts of mana, or my opponent makes me. Because otherwise, if I'm winning, why don't I just keep winning? Is the thought. All right, so we're bashing him. This time I manifest an Edric. So my opponent plays Hornet Queen. So we're gonna flip Edric. Savala triggers a bunch of times off of the guys, but he doesn't actually they're not bigger than any of the other stuff on the board, so he doesn't get any cards. It just triggers and says you don't get cards. So we'll flip Edric, and down comes. That's it. I feel like I've got enough board presence here. I can float 15 mana even without playing Primeval Titan. So I mean, I floated 10 mana after the heave. So even though I couldn't get even though he got a beast because I couldn't get his Thragtusk off the board, with the amount of mana I have, I'm able to play Savala, then Primeval Titan, draw a card, put 2 lands into play, cast an Overgrown the wall that produces mana for the number of defenders I have. And notice, of course, I have Caryatid, Wall of Blossoms, and Overgrown Settlement. So actually, this wall actually produced 3 mana last turn and has the potential to produce 3 for me as well. But because I am only down to 9 cards, I actually throw away the Wall of Blossoms. I throw away Bird of Paradise because I've got enough mana. Like after an Upheaval, if your opponent's throwing away Bird of Paradise in their green deck, you're probably in a lot of trouble. Anyway, that's exactly what's happening here. So I keep the Mana War so that I can take care of the beast over there. And that is done deal there. I'm being very cautious now. I'm down to 8 cards in the library. And I'm actually going to... I'm so greedy. I think I... Do I Stoneforge here? I can't even remember. Oh, I prime time 2 lands into play. So now I have 6 cards left in my deck. And oh, I decide not to. I decide not to Stoneforge down to 5 cards. All right, so I draw for. I'm down to 5 from drawing. Producing a ton of mana off of Savala Primeval Titan combo, and I do Stoneforge into Sword of Fire and Ice. So now I've got Sword of Fire and Ice on Primeval Titan, and that's it. So I pumped the Titan up with the Jitte. I should have pumped him before I actually activated Savala so that I would have had additional mana this turn. But in reality, like, my opponent's super dead. Oh, I see what I did. I'm sorry. I must have pumped him once and then... Did I? Oh, I see. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I kill his Secure Tribe Elder, and then what's going to happen is Primetime's going to hit him for 8. Plus 2 from the sword is 10. Of course, Mana War is 2 more. Jitte would have been 2 more. I mean, he's so far beyond dead that we're almost killing him in the next game. So anyway, could activated Stirring Wildwood. It's just crazy, right? So that's it. It's really, really good deck. I really enjoyed playing this deck, and I think when I draft Cube again, because green appears to be underdrafted, and the reason I actually switched to green, blue's always drafted in Legacy or Vintage, but the reason I switched to green as my support color was that I noticed in my first 2 drafts that green cards, like bomb green cards, were just circling the table over and over. And that seemed crazy to me. Like, you'd have really late Birds of Paradise, or you'd have like birthing pods going to the end, or you'd have like planeswalkers that weren't getting picked, Primeval Titans getting passed early. It was crazy. So in the 3rd draft, I just getting the feeling that people don't respect green in this format, it seems. I went for it, and as obviously that worked out very well. So I think that I will do the same in the next draft. Anyway, I hope you had fun with that. I know it's a little off the beaten path for what the channel's normally about, but I like to switch over occasionally to Cube because I just enjoy I enjoy playing with older cards, and I enjoy the puzzle that Cube presents. I do my complaint with Legacy, however, is that Legacy Cube is the worst of the cubes. Because they did not, despite me having counters there, they actually did not include enough quality counter spells, and there are far too many ridiculous plays like Show and Tell, Sneak Attack, and the one that I ran into the most in my first 2 attempts to play Legacy Cube, all 6 of 6 opponents or something crazy, because I was playing, well, not my first one, but in my not the single limb draft, but in the first what do you call it? The thing with the trophies. God, I'm totally drawing a brain fart here. But anyway, because I never do it. What's the play lobby? Apologize. I cannot seem to recall the name of what this format. Limited League. There we go. All right. So this is also the first time I've ever played in a league. But the problem is, so I actually played in the previous league. I played 3 of 3 opponents killed me with Living Death. Every single opponent I faced had a Living Death deck, and every single one of them drew Living Death and killed me. And I was playing blue in all of those, and there just weren't enough counter spells. They're just not enough to stop it. So that's my biggest complaint with Legacy. But I'll probably continue to play it simply because I get to play with older cards, and I do like playing Cube. So anyway, thanks for watching. That's all we got now, and I'll see you next time.